Talks of Trainer Dave. I'm your guest host, Gabby Altenor, and I'm joined here by our guest and namesake, Trainer Dave.
Thank you for having me. Super excited to be on the other side of the podcast today.
Well, welcome, David, and thank you for having me as your guest host today. We're joined here by Trainer Dave, who is the owner of NPWR Training. He's a former college and semi-pro football player, linebacker positioning, right?
Correct, yes.
Sports performance coach, certified strength and conditioning specialist, level 1 weightlifting coach, an assistant athletic performance coach at Newman University. And is there anything else you have to add on that long list of resume?
I think you pretty much covered everything.
Awesome. So let's get a bit into your background and tell me, where did you go to school? What did you study?
Yeah, so I was born and raised here in Wichita. Went to Coffeyville Community College for 2 years. Played football down there. Studied health and physical education there, and then from Coffeyville I transferred to Friends University. I was there about a year and a half. I did graduate a semester early, but got my degree in health and physical education. And yeah, just that's the highest schooling I have, is just a bachelor's degree in health and physical education.
Well, not just a bachelor's degree. You know, there's probably some random percentage out there of people who haven't been able to even go to college. So that's an achievement all in itself. And while you were playing football at Coffeyville and at Friends, you were a linebacker?
Correct. Yes, middle linebacker.
And you were a 2-time all KCAC linebacker. Can you tell everybody and the listeners what that means?
Yeah, so maybe hyped it up a little bit more than what it sounds like, but I was... My first year at Friends, I was honorable mention all KCAC. My second year at Friends, I was second team all KCAC. So I guess one of the top linebackers in the league. I just say all KCAC because I think it sounds better than honorable mention and second team. But yeah, I guess I was a decent linebacker if I got those awards.
And is KCAC the league that you were in?
Correct. Yes. Yes, I think it's Kansas Collegiate Athletic Conference or something like that.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk about some of your certifications. Like we mentioned in the intro, you have your CSCS and level 1 weightlifting certifications. What do those entail? Why do you have them? Let's get into the nitty gritty of it. What are they to start with?
Yeah, so the CSCS is the Certified Strength Conditioning Specialist certification. That is through the NSCA, National Strength Conditioning Association. And this really isn't just your typical, personal training certification. This is more so towards athletes and strength conditioning, especially if you want to work with athletes at a high level, college or Olympic. You pretty much have to have that CSCS certification to get in the door.
That's kind of, from what I understand, like the gold standard of training certifications.
Yeah, I would say so. It's not, you can't just, take a weekend course and then pass that test. It's pretty grueling. There's two portions of the test. There's a scientific portion and then there's a practical portion, and you got to go into a proctored exam room. And it's like 50 questions on both sections. I believe it has like a 60% pass rate. I actually failed half of it my first time taking it. And then luckily passed it on the second time around, but, it's a pretty gold standard certification. I think if you ever see somebody with CSCS behind their name, like, they probably know their stuff.
Now, what about the level 1 weightlifting certification? What does that entail, and how did that preparation come about?
Yeah, so that one is more, it's like that is actually a 2-day weekend course, where you go down. I went down to Kansas City, and there was an Olympic weightlifter. Her name was Anna Martin, that basically taught it was more practical. Like, she ran you through how to coach up a clean, coach up a snatch or a jerk. Basically, your Olympic lifts, those are a lot more complex, and you got to be a lot more technical when coaching those up. So that was actually the very first certification I got. I'm not going to lie, it was pretty easy. Yeah. I mean, it's a cool certification. It is pretty cool that it's more practical, where you get to go down and learn from an experienced coach, but then you basically take an online test after that. And I'm not going to lie, the online test is pretty easy.
Well, that's always good considering you've had the hard versus the easy test, right?
Yeah.
So, with those tests and those certifications that came with them, how applicable do you think they are to your day to day as a trainer?
Yeah. I got to be honest, not super applicable. I mean, I always tell trainers like your certifications are your ticket to the show. Like, kind of gets you your foot in the door. Like, again, if you want to get into college strength conditioning, you got to have that CSCS to at least get in the door.
And if you're working at a gym, that's something you would need as well.
Typically, yes, it definitely helps to have a certification. But in regards to how practical is it, I don't feel like it's super practical. It's I tell new trainers all the time, it really is more so the soft skills that they don't teach. They don't teach the business skills in these certifications. And I think that's where you'll really thrive in this industry is, how can you communicate to clients? How can you sell yourself? How can you market yourself? Yes, of course, programming is important. And the CSCS does a pretty good job of going over programming, but I just don't think there's a lot of things in that they teach in that book that I don't think are super practical. Like, for example, I believe, when you're running a full speed sprint, I think you're supposed to rest like 3 to 5 minutes. If you run a full speed 10-second sprint, you should, you should be resting like 3 to 5 minutes in between sprints. But to be honest, like I train athletes at Newman, and I feel like that's not super practical for me to take them down to the basketball courts, have them run a full speed sprint, and then rest, 5 minutes. So yeah, I feel like it's just not the most practical certification.
Yeah, not everything translates into your actual practice as a trainer.
Yeah, and you gotta be able to change things up on the fly, stuff like that. So those are the things that just certifications don't teach.
All right. Well, I don't want to get too much into the soft skills because we're definitely going to have a huge section about that. But that's super interesting to hear that the certifications aren't necessarily all that helpful in your day to day because you're learning more of the things on the job, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think I tell people all the time, it's throwing yourself into the fire and actually getting repetitions at coaching different clients is where you're going to learn the most.
Awesome. I guess that's the same with law. Being an attorney, having that practical experience was always something I valued over just the theoretical and the classroom
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yep.
So, in talking about that practical experience, let's talk about how you got into training and why you chose training as your profession. So, how and why did you know you wanted to be a trainer?
Yeah, so I started playing sports at a young age. Played football, basketball, track. Football was probably my favorite sport growing up, especially in middle school. But I was pretty undersized. I was playing offensive line. I was probably about the same height as I am now. I was probably like 5'9", 5'10", but like 120 pounds. I looked like a twig. And I remember, some people would tell me, I needed to bulk up if I really wanted to play football at a high level. And so I started lifting weights in my mom's basement. We had a little weight set, and I started researching about different workout programs that I could do to bulk up and get stronger. And I found a pretty good program called Starting Strength, where it's squat, bench, deadlift, military press, power clean, and then you add 5 pounds to the bar every workout.
So progressive overload.
Progressive overload, yeah. Yep. And I progressed pretty quick. I mean, when you're a beginner, you can progress pretty quick. And I just fell in love with the process of getting better. I felt like I could really see my performance on the football field increasing. But more importantly, I could see my self-confidence in myself increasing. I just felt like I could go down to the weight room and I just felt at ease. Like I felt like, I could put my mind at ease lifting weights, and just definitely became a passion of mine. And going into high school, into college, I just kept on striving to learn more and putting in more time in the weight room to better myself. And I think when I got to high school, I knew for sure that I wanted to become a trainer. And yeah, here we are, I guess, over 10 years later.
Yeah, so it sounds like your main interest and kind of focus that you got interested in training was sports performance training.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. So, how long have you been training overall since you've graduated?
It's been about 5 years, I would say. I did like an internship at Newman University when I was in my undergrad. And then I did that for about a year. And then I also got a job at the YMCA. And I believe, it was 2019. December 2019 is when I actually started at the YMCA.
So, at the beginning of your career, you were working at the YMCA.
Correct. Yep.
And the YMCA is a big box gym.
Yeah, I call it a big box gym. I mean, it's there's multiple locations. You got the front desk staff. You got more of a general membership gym. Like, not they offer personal training, but I'd say the majority of people that go to big box gyms just work out on their own without a trainer.
So then what is a big box gym compared to a private studio?
Yeah, so I'd say a big box gym, it's more about volume. They do have more money. They have all the nice equipment, the tons and tons of treadmills, cardio equipment, but it's obviously they need that a lot of equipment because of the volume of people that they could be seeing. I believe there's actually a statistic that, like, with all the volume of people that have memberships at big box gyms, I think like 90% of them don't actually show up.
So they're just making money off of the memberships without actually having the bodies in the
Correct,
building.
yes. Because I think there's actually, like, logistically, if everybody showed up like at the same time or on the same day, that everybody that had a membership showed up, like, there's no way the gyms would actually be able to cater towards them.
That's so funny because in the law, we have this statistic that over 95% of criminal cases are pled out, like plea deals. And people are like, what? Like, why don't people go to trial? Well, it's because the courts would not function if everybody was taking their case to trial. So that definitely makes sense with a gym kind of membership situation. If everyone was actually using their memberships after they get and sign up for their New Year's resolution,
yeah,
there's no way that the Y and these big box gyms would continue to function.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how long were you working at the Y?
Yeah, so I was there about 2.5 years. I tell people when I started at the Y, like, I literally started from ground zero. Didn't really know a ton about training. My programming wasn't the best. I was a college. I was playing football at Friends at the time. So, like, I remember sometimes I'd work at 5 a.m.
Oh, wow.
5 a.m. to like 11 a.m. Then I would go to class. Then I would go to practice. And then sometimes I would go back to the gym to train clients after practice.
My goodness.
And yeah, it was a grind, but it was awesome.
And you still graduated early through all of that, right?
I did. Yep. I was taking, I think, around 15 credit hours.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a grind, but it definitely made me a better person.
Awesome. And do you think it's beneficial for new trainers to start at a big box gym? Why or why not? What was it like for you?
I do. I think big box gyms are a great place for new trainers to get a lot of repetitions at training different clients, at meeting new people on the floor, at consultations, stuff like that. And I tell people the only way to get better at sales, training clients, marketing yourself is by actually doing those things. And I think a big box gym is a great place to start because the barrier of entry is so low. The turnover rate's pretty high at big box gyms. And so I bet most big box gyms are constantly looking for new trainers. And so, especially if you don't know for sure if you want to get into this field long term, it's just a great place to get your feet wet. You don't need a bigger certification to train there. And so, I think it's a great place for new trainers to start out to see if they really are built for this industry.
Now, I heard you use a couple terms of art, which I'm assuming are in training, and I want to make sure our listeners understand. So, you mentioned a low barrier of entry. What does that mean?
So I would say like it literally means you can take a weekend course and then you can start training clients,
Right.
which is pretty common in this industry. And
Like
it,
some certain facilities, right, offer certification programs for their own employees.
yeah, so the YMCA has their own certification, and it basically is you take a weekend. I believe it's a 1 day and a half course, and yeah, you do that, which is pretty simple, basic stuff. I mean, it is hard to go over everything that you need to learn in a day and a half when you're teaching new trainers, and then you do take an online test. And to be honest, that online test, like you could basically just look things up,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, it's a shame because I have physical therapists and chiropractors on on the podcast, and they're looked at as doctors,
Right.
and they have to go through pretty rigorous schooling. They have to go through apprenticeships.
Yeah,
But
because they're still medical doctors.
yeah, so basically, yeah, before they can start like treating patients, like they have to go through a lot of different schooling and just get a lot of hands-on experience before they are actually trusted to start dealing with patients.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas as a trainer, yeah, you can take a 2 day certification, or even sometimes you don't even like some gyms won't even require certifications.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen gyms where if you just look the part, they'll let you start training clients, which is a shame because then I feel like this our standards in this industry aren't super high. I think that's why people think this is not a serious career. People think it's a side hustle because we don't have high standards for our trainers, which is a shame.
And you also mentioned a high turnover rate. Do you think this low barrier of entry has anything to do with that?
Yeah, I would say so because like for me, the way I think about it now is I'm 5 years in the game. I've spent literally over thousands of dollars on my education, on my if you I mean really if you think about it, my bachelor's degree, my CSCS, my USAW, all the books that I read, and then if you also put in all the hours I've spent training on the floor,
Mhm.
that's a lot of money right there.
Right.
So whereas if somebody at the YMCA that took a 2 day certification, I feel like they don't have much skin in the game. Like they think, oh, I didn't really have to work that hard to get here, so I can easily just leave and go into another career field.
Now, this is a hot take that we'll have later, but we'll have some more for you to answer. But since it's so on point, there's a saying that 90% of trainers won't make it past their first year. Do you agree with that statement?
100%. Especially with all the different gyms I've been at, and also with all the trainers I've talked to. Pretty much every trainer does agree with that statement. And you know, the YMCA, like I there were probably I'd say close to 20 trainers I worked with at the Y. And I think like pretty at my specific branch, I don't think there's a single trainer that is doing this full time.
Right.
And so I've firsthand seen the turnover rate, and no shame. I mean, it's not for everybody, but it's a really rewarding industry to be in, and I think the people that can that the 10% that can knit and grit it out, they're a special group of people.
And how do you think the 10% of those trainers that do overcome the odds, how do they combat this statistic and help new trainers kind of make it past their first year?
Yeah. Well, I think in order to make it long term in this industry, you've got to be passionate about what you do, and you have to know your why. Like you can't just. I think you can't just go into this industry and think, oh, I love working out, I want to become a trainer. Like you've got to have a passion to serve others, and yeah, like you've got to have a why when you're waking up at 5 a.m. every morning and you're working split days. I think that's the biggest thing is, and that's why I love this podcast. And I love talking to other trainers because I think trainers, especially trainers that have been in this industry 5 to 10 years, I mean, those are some of the most charismatic and passionate trainers that you'll ever meet, or charismatic and passionate people in general that you will ever meet. And I just feel like when you talk to those people, you can always just feel their passion and charisma, and it's just super inspiring.
So, along with that inspiration, while you were at the Y, did you feel like as a new trainer, you got guidance to help you through as you were trying to get through that first year?
To be honest, not really. They try to, like, you have to take like fitness modules where like they teach an hour long class on sales. They have the 2 day 2 day like weekend certification course for new trainers. But once you get past those, like you really are thrown into the fire. Like you're expected to be on the floor, meeting new people, making sales, and then you don't get a ton of programming advice when you're running boot camps and when you're programming for your different clientele. And so, yeah, the way I viewed it when I was there is like I was running my own business inside of the YMCA.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the time it was Akao Training. People thought it was Dakota Training, so I had to change it to David Akao Training.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, that was the way I viewed it. Is I was running my own business inside of the YMCA, even though that wasn't the case. Like I was still on payroll, I was still a W-2 employee, but yeah, you kind of do have your own freedom a little bit. Like you can program pretty much however you please. You can schedule clients when you want. So yeah, I didn't feel like there was a ton of guidance when I was there.
So you started talking about, I think, what are you considered to be some of the benefits of that job. But when you were at the Y, what was your favorite part of working there, and then what was your least favorite part?
Yeah, I'd say my favorite part about working at the Y was just all the different people I got to meet. A lot of those members, I'm still like members and coworkers. That was the cool part is like even the front desk staff, like I was pretty good friends with. And at a private studio, you don't really have front desk staff, so I did enjoy the camaraderie between the staff and also the members. Like even the members that just came in to work out, like those were some cool people that you got to build really cool relationships with. And again, a lot of those people I still talk to this day. And also, like I did enjoy to an extent the different variety of training I got to do. So I mean I can just thinking from the top of my head, like I think I had like a 60-year-old man I trained. I had a lot of moms I trained. I did have some youth athletes. I still have some youth athletes from the Y that I train to this day. I trained a lot of boot camp group classes. Those were pretty fun. I even remember I got to the point where I was leading virtual workouts on Y360, basically live stream workouts, and so that was cool. So I think just the different experiences I got as a trainer was probably my favorite part. Least favorite part, I would just say the pay wasn't the best, unfortunately, and then I just think there was a lot of unrealistic expectations from management, and it's a shame because a lot of those management, those higher ups that are making these expectations for trainers have never trained a day in their life, and they don't understand the grind. They don't understand what it's like to work split days, to have an inconsistent paycheck from losing clients. It really was a shame, and I think that's the problem with a lot of big box gyms. And I think that's why the turnover rate is so high, is because there's a lot of unrealistic expectations from management.
Well, we know that despite those unrealistic expectations, you beat the odds, you made it past your first year, and after you worked at the Y, you worked at Amplify. Now, is
Yes.
Amplify a private studio?
Yeah, it's more so a private studio.
And how long did you work at Amplify?
I was there close to 2 years. I believe it was like a year and 8 months I was there total.
So during that time, Was there any guidance for you as a trainer? How was your experience? What did you feel about it?
Yeah, I'd say the owner there was he was a good guy, and I do appreciate my time there because I did learn a lot. Um, I I do think when I came into Amplify, I was a pretty decent trainer just from my experience at the Y. I mean, there's always room for improvement, but I wasn't. It wasn't like I was just a trainer fresh out of college that had never trained a client. Like I think I came into that gym with like I was trusted to be fed clients because I had that experience. And so again, same thing there. Like technically I was a W-2 employee, but I still continued to build. Actually, then I rebranded it to David Akao Training, but I continued to kind of build that brand even though I was a W-2 employee. So, yeah, I still felt like I was running my own business. I still was trying to bring in my own clientele myself. Yeah, I think it paid off, and I think it's great for trainers if they are employees. They should have that mentality that they are running their own business because the reality is most of the time um clients are coming to train with the trainer,
Mm-hmm.
right? It of course it helps to have a nice gym and nice equipment to train with, but
Shiny dumbbells.
yeah, but it really is the trainer relationship that I believe is what makes them come back.
And in your time at Amplify, can you kind of walk us through what your day to day would look like, your typical day as a trainer at Amplify?
Yeah, so again, Amplify was different because it was basically just personal training, whereas at the YMCA it was kind of nice because you have a little bit of stability to make some extra money by working the fitness floor and just I mean, but you're cleaning machines, you're talking to members, stuff like that. Whereas of course if you go to private studios, you don't really have that luxury. So for me, it literally was just training clients. And I remember when I started off, not a ton of people from the Y followed me. And so kind of had to rebuild my clientele. And I was lucky. I was one of the more motivated trainers on that team. So I was kind of fed a lot of leads and clients, which helped. But it literally was just training clients. I remember I was door dashing when I for a while there because just trying to make some extra money to make ends meet. But doing a lot of things like posting on social media. I would go to golf courses or tennis courts to put up flyers. Just trying to do little things like that to get my name out there. I mean, we ran some free speed clinics, little things like that. And slowly but surely, I did build up a pretty good clientele there. I believe there were points at when I was at that gym to where I was training 30 to 40 hours a week,
Oh, wow.
and I was training 7 days a week. I was training volleyball teams, baseball groups. We had a location in Derby and Bel Air that I would drive back and forth between those two locations, and yeah, it was a grind, but I was pretty proud of what I was able to build there.
Now, what is the focus of Amplify? Is that also kind of sports performance training only, or is there some general population clients there too?
It's a little bit of both. It was pretty cool. I mean, I was training an 80-year-old client there. I was training, something like 65-year-old client there, but also training sports performance. So, yeah, it was a little bit of everything. I think that the clientele started off more as general pop, and then with my background, I was able to bring some more sports performance clientele to that gym. So it was a little bit of both.
All right. So we talked about your least and most favorite parts of your other job, but what were your favorite parts of working at Amplify and your least favorite parts of working at Amplify?
Yeah, I'd say my favorite part about working at Amplify was it. It that was a startup business at the time, and that business was really kind of built from the ground up when I was there, and I do believe I helped it grow quite a bit with all the training I did there. And it really gave me a lot of insight into running a business, because I did a decent amount of business side there too. I mean, I was still doing a pretty good job networking and making my name known. I was getting better at sales, stuff like that. And it really, I think, helped me build the confidence. Like, if I can do this here, I can do this on my own. And so that was probably my favorite part. It just kind of taught me, like, business, it's not rocket science. Like, you can take payments over Venmo, you can market through social media, little things like that. I don't think it's as complicated as people make it out to be.
So, from your experiences at the Y and at Amplify, what tips or advice do you have for someone who wants to become a trainer that you think is the most important that you've gotten from your experiences there?
I think kind of what I just said, like, you got to think like you're running your own business. Like, it's not it that having that business mentality will greatly set you apart as a trainer. And I think that's been the downfall of so many trainers that I know is, and it's a shame because I know of a lot of really, really smart trainers that might even be more knowledgeable about training than I am, but they don't focus on the soft skills a lot. They don't market themselves, and they don't sell themselves. And if you can't sell yourself, like, it's going to be really hard to help clients, because like, that's really the only way to take them on as a client, is they got to be paying you. And ultimately you got to make a living as a trainer, because if you don't, like, you're going to have to quit and find a real job.
Yeah. Well, that is a real job.
Yeah,
So,
quote unquote.
what are some things for trainers to consider when they are looking for a gym to train at versus, thinking about big box, thinking
Yeah.
about private studio, thinking about maybe opening their own gym? What are
Mhm.
some things they should be considering?
I think a big thing is you gotta vibe with the gym owner, or fitness director, like fitness manager. Like, it's really important that you vibe with whoever you're going to be working pretty closely with. Like, do you guys have the same values? Stuff like that. It's pretty important, because, like, I've seen some trainers will say, "Oh, I only want to work with athletes," and then they work at Planet Fitness. Well, it's like, you're probably not going to be training a lot of athletes at Planet Fitness. And so, yeah, I think also just knowing your target market and, like, who do you want to work with, I think is super important.
Now we know, since you're wearing the brand, that you are the owner of NPWR. We talked about that in the introduction as well. But you also mentioned in your intro with Amplify and the Y that your brand used to be David Akao Training. So how long has David Akao Training been in business?
Yeah, it's hard to say, because technically I argue, like, my business started 5 years ago when I was at the YMCA. Technically, I didn't file an LLC until like July of 2023. So I guess you could say it's been in business about a year and a half.
Yeah.
But I really would argue, like, because I mean, the day I opened up my LLC, I did have paying clients already. So I guess you could also argue that my business started, 5 years ago, illegally, when I was at the Y.
And well, considering it's your name, you could also just say it's David Akao Training. You were training people. It's
Yeah,
just your
absolutely.
name. So
Absolutely.
the nickname Trainer Dave, where
Mhm.
did that come from in your career?
Yeah, so it's really funny. I was working at the YMCA, and there was a front desk girl I was friends with, and she would get on the intercom and say things like employee Steve, please come to the front desk. And I remember one of my there was maintenance technician and I were joking, because then he was like, "Oh, maintenance technician Nathan, please come to the front desk." And so then I made the joke. I said, "Trainer Dave, please come to the front desk." And so I just used that as a joke, and I like referred to myself as Trainer Dave on social media. And then all of a sudden, like, I have my coworkers and clients on social media, and then they start calling me that in person. And I think ever since then, the name just stuck.
Yeah, it truly has.
Yes, absolutely.
So, how and when did you take the plunge and decide to open your own business as David Akao Training?
Yeah, so it was when I was the head trainer at Amplify. I think deep down I've always known I've wanted to be a business owner. I've always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. That was always, I think for me, that was the next step. I felt like when I was at Amplify, I got kind of complacent. I just felt like there wasn't much more growth for me as a trainer there. And so I felt like I really, and I felt like I really needed to take that next step and kind of get out of my comfort zone and just pull the trigger and open my own business. And yeah, so it was July of 2023 last year is when I basically pulled the trigger. I opened up my LLC officially. It's so technically my LLC is just David Akao LLC because I didn't really have a good brand name for myself yet, and so I was just David Akao Training for about 6 months. I basically went down to Foundations Fitness and was just paying rent to the gym there, and then bringing in a clientele. And luckily, I did have paying clients that wanted to come with me, and it just lit a fire inside of me. Like I was doing tons of cold emails, cold phone calls, and I built up a clientele pretty quick. And sure enough, I was training. I eventually got to 20 to 30 hours of training. I think there were points during my busier times of the year where I was 30 to 40 hours of training. And I feel like I never hustled more in my life until I actually became an official business owner. And just reflecting back on this past year and a half, like I feel like I've just grown so much as a person and as a trainer.
So you've since then rebranded to NPWR NPWR,
Correct.
and you came up with that name how?
I was looking for a good mission statement, so we came up with the mission statement to empower underdogs to achieve their full potential through unwavering support and guidance. And I think it was you that had mentioned just like NPWR, basically stemming from that word empower. And I loved it. I thought it was super unique. It actually had some meaning behind it. And yeah, I think it's kind of stuck ever since then.
So when did you decide that you needed to kind of transition the name from David Acau to Empower?
Yeah, so I think I've always known that deep down. Like, I personally think if I've always wanted to build something bigger than myself. So if I bring on other trainers, if I open up a gym, I don't want it to be David Acau Training. I want it to be something bigger than myself. And there's also other reasons. Like if I decide to sell my business, it's hard. It's kind of harder to sell a business when you're not inside. Like,
It's attached to
yeah,
you as a
exactly,
person.
exactly. So that was a big reason why. Is just I wanted to build something bigger than myself, and then also just other reasons like David Acau Training. A lot of people don't know how to say my last name properly, and was kind of getting tired of hearing it getting butchered all the time. And so I think it was a good move.
So you also didn't really have a name in mind when you first started your business. So would you tell new trainers that that's not necessarily something they need to get hung up on? And did you have any regrets with waiting to come to a decision on your name?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a good point. Like, I remember that was something that held me back is like, I always wanted to be a business owner, but like, I thought to myself, like, I have absolutely no idea like what I'm going to call my business. And so I feel like that was something that held me back for a bit. But I would argue like it's not as big of a deal as you think, especially if you're just a one man show starting off, because yeah, it is just people are coming to see David Acau Training. My friend Anna Kate is just Anna Kate Fitness, and she's done a tremendous job with building a business with her name attached, and she even has coaches that work alongside her. So I feel like it's not as big of a deal as you think, but I do think long term, it is something to just be mindful about if you want to bring on other trainers or even open up your own facility.
So we know how long Empower has been in business. So tell us now what your day to day looks like as a business owner and as a trainer on the floor.
Yeah, so it does change a little bit depending on the time of the year. With it being, Thanksgiving break, I'm not quite as busy, but these past probably 9 months have been pretty enthralling. Um, so I did take I signed a contract with Newman University as a 1099 contractor. So they basically pay NPWR for me to come out there and train some of their teams. So we'll just say, for example, like a Wednesday, I would be there at 6 a.m. to train softball, which would mean I wake up around 5 a.m. Usually it's just softball, so I do get to come back, get ready, eat breakfast, stuff like that. I always like to do reading. I read 10 pages a day. It's a great way to continue your education, to keep developing as a person. And then usually I'll do some business work, and that could be, calling leads, that could be posting on social media, stuff like that, just working on the business. It could also be, yeah, recording the podcasts, little things like that. And then usually I'm back training around, like, it depends on the day. We'll say, I think like 2 p.m. I'll go back to Newman. I'll train the women's basketball team. And then a lot of times from Newman, I have to go to foundations in the afternoon. And usually from like 3 to 8 p.m., I'm training clients. So it's pretty busy, training 6, 7, 8 sessions a day, while also doing the business and the admin work. But it's something that I love. My business is my baby, and definitely want to see it grow and thrive.
Now, what's your favorite part about being the owner of Empower and your least favorite part about it?
I would say my favorite part of being the owner of Empower is just seeing how far we've come, seeing the impact that we're making on the community. I mean, it truly puts a smile to my face when, for example, like the other day we had an optional 6 a.m. lift at Newman, but, had 4 softball girls that wanted to actually put in the work and get better. And, that just puts a smile on my face, because that's 4 college girls that, NPower is positively impacting. And there's so many other stories I could say. Like, we have youth athletes that are in middle school, or some even younger than that. Some are, I think, we got kids from 8, 7, 8, 9 years old, and seeing the smile on their faces when they come into the gym, and some of those kids never want to leave, and just seeing their confidence increase, like, that's the biggest part on me. For me, is I truly feel like we're making an impact every single day.
So, in addition to having your own clientele base with Empower, you also mentioned some of the partnerships that you do. One of those being with Newman University, being one of their strength and conditioning coaches. And I want you to kind of talk about the pros and cons of working as an independent contractor versus a W 2 employee trainer, because you've had both experiences. So,
Yeah.
talk a bit about both of those experiences and what would be the drawbacks and positives on those.
Yeah, so as a W 2 employee, you basically are working for somebody. And some people like that. Like, some people do need direction and guidance, so that can be a good thing. I would say when you're a W 2 employee, you're probably just going to get paid hourly. Again, that could be a good thing because there's kind of a guaranteed pay a little bit, but it could be a bad thing because if you're training a lot, you may not. A lot of times, like, gyms will take 50 to 60% of your pay. And I think, especially if you're bringing in your own clientele, like, that is tough to see the gym take, 50 to 60% of that money. And then, there's little things like you're probably gonna have to be underneath their brand. You're gonna have to, probably wear their t-shirts. You're gonna probably have to train the way they want you to train.
Use their programs.
Yeah, stuff like that. I mean, I guess it could be a nice thing because they do typically pay your taxes. They, you could potentially get insurance and PTO. I do see that. I think that's very rare with gyms to offer that to their trainers.
Like benefits. They
Yeah,
don't
that
typically offer benefits.
typically not. So that's like the pros and cons of being a W-2 employee. Being a 1099 contractor, like you basically are your own boss. You are pretty much running your own business. You got to be an entrepreneur. You got to be able to create business for yourself. I think there's a good pro because like you can charge as much as you want, or you can charge as little as you want. You can work as much as you want or as little as you want. The ceiling's a lot higher as a 1099 contractor, whereas I think as a W-2 employee, I think you can cap out pretty quickly on how much you can make.
Mm-hmm. So you also do partnerships with other gyms, and that's, I guess, one of the freedoms you have being a 1099 and being your own business owner.
Yeah.
And I think one of those is boot camps that you do with, you mentioned Anna Kate Fitness. Do you do anything like that otherwise, or
Yeah.
what type of partnerships do you have?
Yeah, I think that is the great thing about being a 1099 and a business owner is you can structure things your way. You can collaborate with who you want to. Whereas, like if you're at the YMCA, they may not want you collaborating with another trainer because they might view it as competition.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been huge for me and my and Power's growth is we've been able to collaborate with so many like-minded clubs, organizations, and trainers. So like you mentioned, Anna Kate and we collaborated and did a free kids and adult boot camp. There's a gym, the Phoenix here in Wichita, that brought me in as a 1099 contractor to train the Bel Air recovery group. And I've been doing that for over a year and enjoy it. I've had 316 Gymnastics Academy has brought me in as a contractor to run speed agility workouts for their athletes. I've had tons of volleyball clubs and soccer clubs that have just kind of had me as their go-to sports performance coach, and they'll refer me clients. And I think that's been huge for growing Empower.
That's awesome. So you're talking about growing Empower. Let's talk about the future of Empower. What are some future goals you have for yourself and for Empower Training as a business?
Yeah, I try to take it one day at a time, one session at a time. And so I really try to focus on the present and just being better every single day. I want to continue to grow the brand, make it more known around the city of Wichita. We're hosting youth sport camps. That's been pretty big for our growth. We ran a pretty successful volleyball camp, a pretty successful basketball camp. We are going to be hosting a football camp in January. So
and that was after our first successful football camp as well, right?
We had a high school football combine.
Yeah.
Yep. So I love running events and stuff like that to bring the community together. And so we're trying to focus on running a successful football camp in January. And then hopefully just running those other camps, the football combine, the basketball camp, the volleyball camp, and just improve those, make them bigger and better. And just constantly thinking about how I can improve my service as a trainer. We're looking at purchasing some new technology like laser timers to where we can track athletes' speed. Just continue to try to learn more as a trainer so I can provide a better service to my clientele. And then, in regards to Empower, we do want to, like I said, make it bigger and better. So, we've thought about bringing on other trainers to help the business grow. I've gotten pretty close to getting capped out this year with training 30 to 40 sessions a week. So hoping to maybe try to delegate some of that workload and to some other trainers and help other trainers grow and thrive in this industry. And always have thought about opening up my own gym. We'll see if that happens. I know there's a lot of highs and lows of being a gym owner. But yeah, just trying to take it one day at a time, but constantly continue to grow the business.
So we know you do training in person right now still. Do you typically do one-on-ones or do you do groups, and which do you prefer?
I would say we're probably pretty close to 50-50, 50% one-on-one and 50% of groups. I do like the mix because you just definitely get a change of pace. I do love the one-on-ones because you really get to know clients on a personal level when it's just you and them. You can, yeah, and you can really customize it to that individual. You
Mm-hmm.
can change things up on the fly, stuff like that. So I do enjoy that about one-on-ones, but I do enjoy teams as well because I believe there's more energy, there's more competition. You can do some fun games and finishers with teams. So that's what I enjoy about the teams. Yeah, it's hard to say which I prefer. I guess I would say some of my closest relationships have been in that one-on-one settings that I've built with clients. So I guess if I had to choose one, I'd probably go with the one-on-one trainings.
But it sounds like you like a good balance of the
I
two.
do. Yep, I do.
So, do you do any online coaching? We know we talked about you did online coaching at the Y through Y360. Do you still do that? And if not, do you have plans to incorporate that into your business?
Yeah, I don't do a ton of online training. I've done it in the past, and actually, I do have one buddy of mine that's in the military that I've sent workouts through on an app. But to be honest, it's not a huge passion of mine. I think the market is pretty oversaturated with online training. It's hard to do online training for athletes and sports performance. I think it's more of a general pop market. I've thought about adding it to NPWR, but I think as of now, adding that on would be kind of a distraction with what else we have going on. It could happen in the future, but I think for now, I don't see it becoming a huge part of our business.
All right. So, talking about growing the business still and kind of helping new trainers understand how they can use some of your strategies to grow their business. You've mentioned that you operate out of Foundations. Is Foundations a private studio?
Yes, it is. Yep. You basically, I like Foundations a lot because it's a great location. It's a very clean, friendly gym, and you basically just pay rent to the gym, and you can really kind of run your business as you please.
And have you ever considered opening your own gym, or would you advise new trainers to either go to a big box gym or start working out of a private studio like Foundations?
Yeah, I definitely have thought about opening up my own gym quite a bit. Yeah, I just don't think people realize how much sweat and dedication goes into opening up a gym. I mean, you got to find the right location, which could be the hardest part, is finding a location with high ceilings, a place where you're not going to get noise complaints, good parking, stuff like that. And I don't think people understand like the amount of profitability and money you have to make as a gym owner to make a good living.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. And so it's pretty scary. I definitely do advise trainers to, the way I've done it, I've literally taken small steps. It's been big box gym, W-2 employee at a private studio to 1099 contractor at a private studio. So
Mm-hmm.
I do think the next step for me would be to open up a gym, but definitely something I'm still considering quite a bit.
And taking each step at a
Yeah,
time.
taking
Right.
it one step at a time.
So we talked about growing your business, and I just know from your social media presence and from knowing you that one theme you hold true to growing your business is that imperfect action every single day is better than no action at all.
Absolutely.
How does that theme fit into your growth as the owner of Empower?
Yeah, I think another downfall I've seen from trainers is everything has to be perfect. They've got to have the perfect program. Their social media post has to be perfect. I don't think there's anything wrong with having that mentality, but I think some trainers get so caught up in trying to make things so perfect that they don't take action at all. And for me, I've learned pretty quick, like, one of my favorite sayings is ready, fire, aim. Sometimes I hit fire before I really truly think about how good is this social media post, stuff like that. I think it's good and bad for me. Like, I think it's good because I get a pretty good volume of social media posts. I post every single day. Some of them, some of them are great and take off. Some of them not so much, but I think it's better than not posting at all. And it's the same thing with, sending emails and doing consultations. Like, you gotta take action if you really want to get better at doing something.
So, with that theme and imperfect action, you talked about social media, and it's pretty clear that you think social media is important in growing your training business. So, what are some tips you have aside from that imperfect action
Yeah.
that's good for new trainers who want to grow their social media presence?
Yeah. So I do think social media is a great tool for new trainers to use to grow their clientele, but I do see so many trainers do things wrong. For number one, I do believe, it's quantity over quality with social media. Like, you got to post consistently. Like I said, I make it a point for me to post every single day on social media. Like, I I want to pop up on people's timeline every single day and just be that constant reminder that I am a trainer and that if you need me, like, I'm here to serve you. And you just want to kind of position yourself as the obvious choice when somebody needs to hire a trainer. So that's number one, is like, make sure you're posting consistently. Number two, I think, is you really should try to showcase client journeys as much as possible. So I think me posting a video of my athlete, hitting a new hurdle jump PR is going to be a lot more powerful than a video of me working out myself. Because I see a lot of new trainers, they think if they post a video of them hitting a squat PR, like, people are going to want to hire them as their trainer. And I remember I made the mistake kind of early on as a trainer, is I would just post videos of myself working out, doing flashy exercises. But that could also potentially shut people away because, they feel like they can't relate to that kind of stuff. So I would say really trying to not make it about you so much, and to try to showcase your clients as much as possible.
Do you ever outsource for any of your social media purposes, or you handle all of that yourself?
I'd say I handle most of it myself. I know. I know you tend to edit some of my graphics and some of my videos, which is greatly appreciated. I've had some videographers I've hired that have recorded, professional videos for me. But for the most part, I'd say about 90% of it is me just posting myself.
Yeah. So for the social media and just really anything else, how do you use those things or any other methods to generate leads? And we talked about leads. That's pretty much getting some new client, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you generate those leads? What are some methods you utilize through social media or otherwise to get new leads?
Yeah, so I'd say with social media, it kind of is rare for somebody to just message you that they're interested without knowing you at all. So something I stress to new trainers is they gotta be pretty good at in-person networking. And
Mm-hmm.
I think in-person networking is always going to be more powerful than social media. In-person networking and referrals, like asking your clients to think of friends and family that they could refer to you, that you could train. And so I think most of my leads that do message me through social media are, a lot of times, they're people I've met in person. So a great way is, like, once you, like, I remember I used to do this at the Y quite a bit, is I would meet a new member on the floor and I would instantly try to add them on Facebook or Instagram. And then that way they can see all these posts I'm making about training. They can kind of get to know me a little bit better through social media. And then I think they're more likely to, shoot me a message when they want to hire me. Same thing with referrals. Like if somebody mentions my name, like, hey, you should go train with Trainer Dave, check out his Instagram page. Like that Instagram page is ultimately kind of a portfolio and a resume for me.
Mm.
Because I think that's the first thing somebody's going to do when they want to hire a trainer is they're probably going to look that trainer up on social media. And so that's what I would say is I would say really look at it as a portfolio and as a resume. Don't forget about in-person networking. And I think you should really leverage what you're doing in person on social media. So, taking some small clips of your clients and posting it on social media. If you go to an athlete's game, take a picture with that athlete, post it on social media. I think just doing little things like that can go a long way.
So it sounds like leads can be generated by incorporating all three of those things. So in-person networking, using your referral basis, and then having your social media be kind of the fallback for everybody to look at and see the showcasing that you're doing with your training.
Absolutely, yeah. Those I would say in-person networking, word of mouth referrals, and social media are the top three ways to generate leads. For me, especially.
Awesome. So, what networking tips do you have for new trainers who want to start to increase their use of in-person networking?
Yeah, I'd say networking is such a skill that to be developed and that can really set you apart as a trainer. They say your network is your net worth and that it's all about who you know in this industry that can, make you successful. So I'd say like number one is just like don't be afraid to reach out to people and ask to meet with them or talk shop. I think most people will be, absolutely willing to take time out of their day to meet with you. I can't think of very many people that I've reached out to that have turned me down. And if they ignore you and if they say no, like it's okay, just move on to the next person. So that's number one is just like don't be afraid to reach out to people. And then I would say a big one is like really try to be authentic and transformational relationship over transactional. So don't make it all about you. Don't be, if you're meeting with a physical therapist or a chiropractor, you shouldn't be asking for referrals immediately. You should work on nurturing that relationship, getting to know them on a personal level. How do they treat patients? Like, do your core values align with each other? So that, and then, like I said, I think adding them on social media or exchanging phone numbers can go a long way, and just making sure you guys are staying in touch. These people are probably meeting tons of people, almost every week. And so like, what is it about you that's going to stick out? So something I try to do is like, if I meet with another strength conditioning professional, I'll try to share them my Google Drive with my strength conditioning resources. Or maybe I'm giving somebody a t-shirt, or maybe I'm buying them a coffee. Like doing little things like that can go a long way because I think they will remember that.
So now I think the new trainers probably listening to this might be a little overwhelmed because they're thinking about what am I going to do to create my new business? How do I generate leads? All the social media, all of this. So
Yeah.
they're probably wondering at this point, how do they avoid burnout?
Yeah.
And I know that you had mentioned earlier, part of that is focusing on your why.
Yeah.
So let's kind of reiterate your why and talk about what makes Empower unique to you so that you can enjoy what you're doing every day and still fuel that passion into action.
Yeah, absolutely. So biggest thing for me, I think, when I think about burnout or when I think about quitting is like just think about how far I've come. I love reflecting on my journey, and like something I've done this week is I look back on my YouTube videos and I can see 12-year-old me lifting weights in my mom's basement, and I think 12-year-old me would be proud of where I'm at today. And so I just think about all the sweat and dedication I've put in from the Y and going to all these other private studios to where I am now. Like I gotta keep the ball rolling, keep that momentum going. So that's a big one for me, is just thinking about how far I've come and then just remembering my why. And ultimately, those are the clients that I serve. I mean, kind of a hot take, but, and maybe not the way it truly is, but kind of the way I think about it is like, I have hundreds of clients that I train right now. If I got burnt out and just decided to quit, like, I kind of feel like I'm quitting on all of them. Am I really? Probably not, but like, that is kind of the way I think about it. So, just remembering my why and just, ultimately for me, it's the clients and the people that keep me going.
Now you talk about the clients and the people. What is your ideal type of client? Do you have we know your specialty is sports performance, but if you could choose the perfect type of athlete or ideal client that you could have walk in the door as your lead, what would that look like?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's such a tough one for me because I don't know if I truly have an ideal client. You did say athletes, and that really ultimately is my niche, is somebody that's trying to improve their performance for a sport. And so my favorite answer to that is I just want somebody that's coachable and that's fun to work with. And so whether that be a 9-year-old athlete that is just trying to learn how to move and, maybe wants to become a better soccer player, because I do love working with youth athletes. So they're a lot of fun to work with. I do love working with female athletes because I do feel like female athletes are very coachable and they're fun to be around. I've had my fair share of football players that I've worked with, and those are fun because I do truly understand the sport of football because I once played it. I've also had some athletes that you could tell they just don't want to be there. Their parents are forcing them to be there, or there's some athletes that are going to try and talk back to you because they think they know it all. And so that is definitely not my ideal client. Those, dealing with egos or dealing with people that don't want to be there. It's people that are coachable and people that are fun to be around, people that want to get better and want to be there.
I might push on you a little bit because I know there's a certain type of athlete that you also like. And I want you to talk a bit about whether underdogs,
Oh,
your
yes.
athletes being
Okay.
underdogs, fit
Yes.
into that idea of a great client to work with
Yes,
too.
absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that because, yeah, one of my favorite types of athletes to work with are the underdogs. The kids that maybe have gotten cut from the volleyball team, or their coach told them they're not big enough to play football. The kids that have their back against the wall, the kids that haven't had things easy in their life all the time, like those kids, and then turning those kids into 5-star athletes, like that is super rewarding to work with. And yeah, now I'm thinking about all these memories and all these kids that come to mind. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it.
So, what hobbies outside of training do you have that also help you combat burnout?
Yeah, it's hard because I do stay pretty busy with business and training, but I do enjoy reading. I mean, it's kind of linked a little bit with training and business, but I do enjoy reading. I do enjoy writing a little bit. I've written a few blogs online that I've gotten paid for, which has been pretty cool. Enjoy podcasting. I do kind of consider this a hobby. It does fit in with business a little bit, but I enjoy networking. I enjoy meeting with other like-minded individuals and learning from them. I like watching crime documentaries.
Oh yeah.
Spending time with friends and family and eating good food. I'm definitely a foodie, so I love trying new foods. And yeah, I'd say those are my hobbies.
Now, imposter syndrome, is that something you encounter in training, in being a business owner, and how do you navigate it?
Yeah, I'd say it's a very real thing. I think it's a real thing for a lot of people. Just the feeling like you're not good enough. Yeah, I think it's just believing in yourself, like not being afraid to fail is the biggest thing. And also just like I have to think about all the, if somebody doesn't believe in me or if I'm starting to doubt myself, I have to think about all the people in my corner that do believe in me. maybe like if I'm nervous about, training a different team at Newman, I have to think, well, they brought me here for a reason and I am capable of doing this. And so I think it really just comes down to your confidence and just believing in yourself.
Those affirmations and saying them over and over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
What is one thing you've done differently now that you've learned the hard way as a trainer?
I would say taking everybody as a client. Taking everybody as a client and not and being afraid to refer them to somebody else. So,
better known as being afraid to say no.
Yeah, I'd say so. Being afraid to say no. Yeah, because especially early on as a trainer, you want to take everybody because it's so hard to build a clientele. This is a story I'll never forget. When I was at the YMCA, this was probably like my second month as a trainer. I had a guy approach me on the floor about he wanted to find a trainer that could help him become a better distance runner. And for those that know me, they know I know absolutely nothing about long distance running. And I kind of, me being a young, stupid trainer, I was like, oh yeah, like I can help you out with that. And he tried to ask me some questions like, oh, like how would you, how would you help me out? And I'd be like, I think I said some stupid answer. I was like, yeah, we'll start you off with running like 1 mile, and then maybe next week we'll have you run 2 miles. Just kind of BSing the answer. And I think he could see through that. And it's funny because I saw that member almost like weekly for like the rest of my career at the YMCA. And he like would try to avoid talking to me as much as possible because I think he could see through the BS. And so that was something I learned the hard way is just I should have referred him to somebody else, but maybe my ego at the time was too high that I just, I wanted to try to take on everybody.
Now converse that with what is one thing you learned early on and have stuck with since the beginning of your career?
I would say authenticity, like being yourself. I think early on in my career, I thought there's the limited belief like you got to be super hoorah, you got to be super extroverted as a trainer, and that's just not me. That's not who I am. I mean, I think I can bring energy to a session. I think I can project my voice, but I'm not the kind of guy that's going to bring fake energy to a session because that's just not me. And I think I've come to realize like not everybody wants that. Some clients may want, that hoorah, that cheerleader coach, but some clients just want somebody that is going to show up for them consistently and that's going to be a pillar of support for them. So I think just staying true to myself and to who I am as a person has really helped me as a trainer.
And just leaning into that, being comfortable leaning into that is something new trainers should also.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I think we're getting to your favorite part.
Awesome.
So we're getting close to the end. Hot takes.
Sweet.
So we already talked about the one with the 90% of trainers not making it past their first year. But there's so much more. So one of them would be the soft skills and the hard skills. Do you think it's more important that new trainers connect and converse with clients than mastering the art of programming?
100%, I would agree. I think it's we just had the Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul fight, and I would argue like being able to talk about that with a client is probably more important than what warm up they're doing. And I just say that because as a personal trainer, like you have to be a likable person. Like people got to want to be around you, especially if they're spending 3 hours a week with you. And so, if you can have them on the best program, but I think if it's just dead awkward silence in between sets, like, are they really going to want to keep coming back? And I feel like probably not.
So making it an enjoyable experience also just starts from whether you guys can vibe as
absolutely,
client and
absolutely.
trainer.
And I think for me, that's my favorite part is it's the conversations in between sets. It's, getting to know them on a personal level is probably what I enjoy most about being a trainer.
Next hot take: competition versus camaraderie. And this is a huge thing in the legal profession too. So I'm so excited to hear this answer. Do you view other gyms or trainers as competition? Why or why not?
I would say for the most part, no. And I'll expand on that. Like, for example, like Orange Theory and CrossFit gyms, like I feel like in no way can you really consider me and them competition because they don't really market towards athletes like I do. Yeah, I don't view those types of gyms as competition at all. With that being said, like there are some sports performance trainers and gyms in the area that you might consider as competition. Again, I don't really see it that way because a lot of these gyms do operate differently. Some of them are more group classes, and I think at the end of the day, like every coach, every gym operates differently. So you pretty much are getting a different service depending on what trainer or gym you go to. Yeah, so for the most part, I don't really. Oh yeah, the last point I was gonna make is like we have 500,000 people here in Wichita, so like I mean logistically I can't train every single athlete in Wichita. So I think there's enough athletes, there's enough clients to go around and for everybody to win.
Mm-hmm. Guerrilla marketing. I think this goes hand in hand with kind of your idea that imperfect action is still better than no action. You've said on your social media that your business depends on sales. So market daily with pride, integrity, and enthusiasm. What do you think that says about how you view marketing and why guerrilla marketing has been so successful for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say it really just goes like you got to put yourself out there. And so yeah, one thing I did when I pretty much went off on my own is I got a Instagram decal and I put it on the back of my Toyota Corolla. I got my license plate changed to Trainer Dave, TRNR DAV. Put a Halloween prop hanging with a bloody hand hanging outside the trunk. I even taped my business card to it. I think it's just little things like that. Like it's funny. People find it funny, but also at the same time, they're like, wow, this guy really cares about what he does. He really loves what he does if he's willing to market himself like that. And so I think it has been pretty successful. And I argue like that Toyota Corolla goes hand in hand like with the Trainer Dave brand. Like everybody knows what car I drive, and people love it, I think.
Yeah. So it sounds like to new trainers, you're basically saying put yourself out there and don't
Yeah.
be afraid of failure or
Yeah,
judgment.
yeah. There's a quote I like. It's R.I.P. to the opportunities missed because of caring about what others people would think or being afraid to fail.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think we can probably just think about just times we missed out on opportunities because we were just afraid of what other people would think. And we can't be afraid of what other people think. We can't be afraid of rejection, and we can't be afraid to fail.
Right. Business expenses. We know that you may have had some questionable business expenses, but I think this is important for new trainers and new business owners to know what kind of things they may encounter as business expenses, whether it's mileage, whether it's marketing. What are some of those things that come to your mind as the forefront of things that they should be considering as business expenses, and what some of the questionable ones are in your kind of portfolio or history?
Yeah, so I think, if you're a bit 1099 business owner, you got to keep track of your business expenses. Like, what are you spending money on that's, basically helping your business? And so, common ones, I mean, like business mileage, I think every trainer should do that. Their mileage from their home office to the gym and back, because those miles do add up,
Do
especially.
you use like any software for that?
I use an app called Mile IQ that basically automatically tracks that stuff for me. It's like $60 a year. I think it's worth it, but you definitely could do it manually. I think it would take a little bit more work. But yeah, business mileage is huge. I mean, your phone bill is a big one because you're constantly using your phone to text clients and call clients. So your phone bill is definitely arguable as a business expense. I would try to do, if you got an apartment or a house, get a home office, right? Because you're probably spending time in there programming, workouts for your clients. You're marketing yourself on social media, stuff like that. So using part of your rent as a home office is definitely a good business expense. Wi-Fi is another big one. Business cards, stuff like that. Marketing. There's a lot of stuff, but those are probably the main ones. Some of the questionable ones I've written off have been the NPWR tattoos on my arm. I still think it's arguable because it is my logo. I posted on social media. People love it. The Halloween prop that I mentioned, I wrote that off because I was using it to hold my business card. I think it's part of the guerrilla marketing. Just yeah, little things like that have been kind of questionable, but I think if you can make a good argument for why you're writing it off, I think you should be fine.
Now I'm going to get a little bit legal on you because I got my legal brain. But the Fair Trades Commission thought about banning non competes, not non solicits, but I know that there are huge opinions on both of those
Yeah.
options. So, what's your take on non competes and non solicits in the training profession?
Yeah, so I think it's really important for new trainers to understand what is a non-compete, what is a non-solicit. So non-compete is basically for a duration of time, we'll say 2 years after leaving a gym, you cannot train at another gym in town for 2 years that's in a 50-mile radius from that gym. Non-solicit would be more like you can't solicit or tell a client to follow you to another gym that you're going to train at in town. Non-compete, I for sure think you should not sign one as a trainer because let's say you take a job at a gym and you don't vibe with the owner, it's just not a good fit for you. And then you sign that non-compete, well, you're kind of screwed for like 2 years if you signed that. And I just kind of feel like it screams a little insecurity from the company. Like, if you don't want a trainer there, like, yeah, it's like I feel like it's not a big deal. Like you should want passionate people working for you, and so if they don't, then they can leave and go somewhere else. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of non-competes. Non-solicits, that is a little bit more understandable, especially if the gym is feeding you clients and feeding you leads. I think that one's really tough to really enforce because unless you have like written proof, like a text message that said, "Hey, Sally, come train with me at this gym," I feel like they're going to be hard to enforce in court because I feel like an easy way around a non-solicit is just post on social media where you're going. That client sees it and then wants to follow you on their own. So I think you should be a little bit cautious with non-solicits and like knowing what they are. So yeah, I don't think it's horrible to sign a non-solicit, but like just got to be cautious with that.
All right. I have one more hot take for you, which is about saturation. Do you think the greater Wichita community, like you said, is over 500,000 people?
Yeah.
Do you think the greater Wichita community is oversaturated with gyms?
Yeah, I think I have a list of the gyms in Wichita. I think there's like 30 to 40 gyms here in Wichita. Which is kind of a lot of gyms. Personally, I don't think Wichita is saturated with gyms because even with all the gyms we have, like most of them are doing pretty well. Most of them have a decent amount of members. Their parking lots are full. And again, logistically, like 500,000 people, we do need more than one gym to serve these people. I do think it depends a lot on your niche. Like, for example, sports performance gyms, I definitely don't think it's saturated in Wichita. Yeah, I don't think so. And so I think as long as you have a niche and like something that separates you from the gym down the road, I think there's plenty of room for more gyms to thrive here in Wichita.
Awesome. Well, Trainer Dave, thank you for allowing me to guest host this episode featuring you, Trainer
Yes,
Dave.
thank you for guest hosting. It's definitely different being on the other side of the microphone.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. I should have switched seats with you because
Yeah, you should have.
that's the host seat.
Right. Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, before we sign off, tell us how and where we can find out more about you, Trainer Dave, and NPWR Training.
Yeah. So NPWR Training, there's our website, npowertraining.com. We're on the social media, Instagram and Facebook at NPWR Training. If you just want to follow my personal account, that's just David Akao. You can add me on Facebook, and Instagram is at David Akao Training, and would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for all you do to empower your athletes through training, and thank you for all you're doing with this podcast to empower other trainers to learn and navigate this profession and be successful.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm just trying to leave the industry better than I found it.
Awesome. Well, thank you to the listeners for tuning in to this season 2 finale episode of Trainer Talks with Trainer Dave. I'm your guest host, Gabby Altenor, signing off. Thank you.